What do you get when you talk about motorcycles, sailing, racing minis, racing around Newfoundland, and in a successful business? Well, you get my guest on Your Story with Melinda, Ruth Thorogood. She's here to talk all about how to redefine yourself through a relationship with Jesus and how that relationship determines what you do with your money when you're successful, the adventures that you go on, reading the Bible, and seeing God in the intricate details of a flower while you're a missionary kid in the Congo. Her story is amazing. It's inspiring if you're struggling with what is God's purpose and will for me, and how can I have that adventure of a lifetime. Ruth, it is so great to have you here, and all of this on the table. Now, for people who can't see it, maybe you should explain what's on the table here, and also this beautiful piece of jewelry around my neck. What is this?
Well, that specifically is actually what every competitor gets when they finish Targa racing in Newfoundland, which is 5 days of between 9 and 11 races a day. And wow. We're racing on the road through all kinds of Newfoundland towns. So it's amazing. That's amazing.
What kind of car are you racing?
Oh, of course.
Oh.
A supercharged Mini, which you
yes,
love.
Yes, please. Yes, thank you. So we're like we're mini friends.
We're mini buddies.
Yeah, we should be racing in Toronto, our minis. I love this. And then these trophies on the table, what do these represent here?
Well, we have this one, our first year of racing, my husband and I, we took Rookie of the Year.
Ooh.
And we took third place.
Yeah.
And then the final one here, because we placed so high, we actually won another trophy for our team, which is the top team.
Wow.
Yeah. And the one that's missing is a plate for under 3 minutes of penalties, which means we did our job really well.
Okay, good. Now, how did you, Ruth, get into racing? Like, I have interviewed a lot of women and men, and no one has been around this table on Your Story with Melinda, my show, that's been a racer.
Well, I know, and I don't really look like a racer either. I get told, you look more like a missionary than you look like a racer.
And you're like, do I receive that? How do I feel? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I guess because of some of my story, I just naturally had it in me. So the first time was my husband, for my 40th, paid for me to go race Talladega.
No
And
way.
I had my foot on the floor and passed several cars, and it was awesome. So it kind of evolved from there.
So when I think of Talladega, though, I always think of Talladega Nights.
Oh, movie. For sure, right.
Sweet baby Jesus, the prayer. I'm sorry, but Will Ferrell. I know. Yes. That's amazing. I had no idea. Talladega.
Yeah, I'm really
That's
a crazy person under this
under this facade, under this very calm missionary-looking woman. Well, let's talk about that. We laugh about the missionary thing, but you actually grew up on the mission field in Kenya and Congo.
Yeah.
So let's hear a little bit about your story from the beginning, and hear about that, and then that moment or the process of you deciding to follow Jesus.
Well, we were first in Kenya when I was 2.5 years old, and I was sick most of the time. I was the middle finger sucker,
Oh,
and which made me very prone to a lot of illnesses. So I actually don't remember a lot of growing up in Kenya, but we returned when I was going into grade 4 and stayed until just before grade 9. And it was, I will write a book about it one day, but it's really, you see the best and the worst of humanity in its really raw form in Congo. And I think because it is so raw, there's no external distractions of materials or whatever to really kind of get to know God. And so for me as a kid, there was time to run in the field and explore and find locusts and catch termites and wacky things like that. But the thing that really got me was one day I was on a walk with God, and walk by myself, but I was just in awe of all the things that God had made. And I noticed that these tiny little flowers that were along the pathway were so incredibly detailed. And I was like, you know what? Only God could do something that tiny for moss that you walk on every day. And it was just that intricate beauty that just really, as an artist, really kind of connected with me.
And how old were you, Ruth?
I was about 12 years old at the time.
So at 12, you noticed this detail of these little flowers.
Yeah, and just that God, the detail of the bugs, because everything in Congo is so beautifully bright. And I just, I'm like, who has that kind of creativity? I don't know anybody that has that kind of creativity. And yet God took time to put detail into the tiniest little thing.
That's a good reminder, Ruth, because in the busyness of our world and in the bigness of what, we create in society to be the big and the glorious and the next big thing, we miss the detail.
Absolutely.
We miss the sweet details of the flower, of the bug. And it's just a good reminder to kind of like slow down and have eyes to see creation and the little things that God has created and done.
Yeah, and just see the beauty in people around you. And, we're just so busy that we don't pause and really think about that. And it's sort of when you have that appreciation for what God has done that you have the stamina then to go, you know what, if you can do that little thing, you can do something really cool in me too. And it carries you through the tough stuff.
So after you saw those flowers and realized that it only could be God to create that, how did that understanding of that relationship of who he is, impact, change, your sort of living, your way of seeing the world going forward? Because after you left Congo, did you come here, back to Canada?
Came back to Canada, yeah. And culturally, it was very different.
Yes.
So back in the Congo, the women were preparing me for marriage because most girls get married at 12. They were really worried that I was not going to be saleable because I didn't know how to smoke fish, and I didn't know. So they had me on a list.
You didn't know how to smoke fish,
exactly.
Ruth.
Pound flour. So they had me on this list, and one woman in particular was determined. So I was learning how to iron properly. I was learning how to wash clothes, like on and on.
Yeah.
And there's a whole other humorous stories along there. But when we came back to Canada, it was everything about beauty and fashion. And I mean, we lived in Africa. We did not worry about beauty and fashion.
Right.
So I'm like, what do you mean I have to do makeup every day? And I have to do, we didn't shower every day because we got water once every 2 weeks. So there were all these cultural changes that we went through. And I was teased incessantly when we returned because I was not hygienic. And but what happened in the garden and the pathways as I was hanging out with God was God really made me feel like a princess. I felt like I was the little girl twirling around in my pink dress and just like daddy just adores me. And so when I got back to Canada, all of that teasing and everything impacted me, but I knew that I was special. It's like that knowledge that you're special, that you're valued, that carries you through that really tough stuff. So when everything would go wrong, I would just be like, you know what? God, I know you're going to help me figure out how to get through this because I know how much I'm loved by you.
Ruth, I love that because not a lot of young women think that way. And I want to ask you about that because I made poor decisions in my teens. I think one thing that you talked about, and we experienced this as a missionary family, the cross-cultural
absolutely
differences and integrating back into a culture where my parents are Canadian, but they'd been gone for so long that when they came back, they were more Asian, Filipino, in their way. It was very, very difficult. And at that time, no one really talked about it. They didn't have this way onboarding back into society. And it was really difficult. I think now churches are understanding that better and having a little bit a better process. But in the time, it was devastating. I remember our family walking into the first grocery store and having a meltdown.
Oh,
because
absolutely. Yeah.
Where's all this meat from? What do you mean milk that wasn't powdered milk? Why are there so many choices of cereal? Like back then it was just like cornflakes and powdered milk and maybe some chicken. Like it wasn't, you know what I mean? And we stood at the grocery store and I remember my mom just like, what do we choose? Because we never had choice.
It's so overwhelming.
Now there's choice.
Yeah.
And I think that was very difficult for our family coming back to Canada.
Yeah.
And even for me, when I'd never lived here, I was like, what is this place?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that was just in the late 80s.
Yeah.
And so was there, I want to go back to this, but just was there anything that helped your family? I mean, it was difficult, but was there anything that helped your family kind of like re-enter back into Canada?
It was, I think it impacted my brothers the most because in Congo, if you're a guy, it didn't matter what age you were, you're the man in charge. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the white skin helped. Mm-hmm. They did a lot of things that they could not do when they came back to Canada. Yeah. So you're kind of shoved back in this little box that's like you're, 14 and 16 years old or, whatever, and you're no, you don't do that at your age,
Right. That's true.
They were running businesses in Congo and all kinds of stuff, and suddenly it was, doesn't work that way here. And it impacted us as well. But the church was really good to us when they came back. Mm-hmm. The hardest part was that, we didn't have the money, which I'm sure you experienced as well. So our clothes were delivered in garbage bags of, donation clothes.
Yeah, ours was in barrels, in missionary barrels, and they'd pry open the top of the barrel and out came clothes. And some of them were new and some of them were used and old. Yeah. Yes, I remember those moments.
And I remember trying to fit into, I'm 9.5 and I'm trying to fit into a size 9 just so that I could wear the cute shoes that came, all those things. But it was definitely a challenge. Mm. And in that situation, which I'm sure it was for you, our family really banded together, right, and supported each other.
In that process, you said that, even though you were teased, because, it was such a difference. Like, when I came over, I was one of very few brown kids in my community and adopted. Yeah. So it was almost like two strikes against me at that time. Absolutely. And people said the worst things to me that I don't think they meant in malice or hurt. Maybe some, and maybe it was just like, well, you're our first brown adopted friend. Like that's what many people said. But even though I made poor decisions later on, there still was that sense of how God saw me, which is what you were just saying. Mm-hmm. Where do you think that came from, and how? I say this because I don't hear a lot of young women being able to confidently say that. Like, your circumstances and people can say things, but you still have this very strong sense of identity in who you are in Christ.
I was one of 7 kids. So, and I was smack dab in the middle and incredibly shy and quiet. Even when we came back and I was in high school, my band teacher spent a whole session just on trying to get me to pound the timpani hard enough that it would actually resonate, because I was just so quiet. I spoke in a mouse voice, and I think because my siblings were really vibrant and ran the show and whatever, I needed God. Like, I really needed God to be there. I needed somebody to be there for me, and God was there for me and just gave me that inner feeling that, you know what, you're going to be just fine. And I think, we tend to let other people box us in and say, this is who you are. And the more that I pressed into God as a kid and then up through becoming an adult, it was an ongoing theme where, someone would say, you're this, and I'm going to box you into this description of yourself. And God would go, no, it doesn't work that way. Yeah. God is infinitely more and he's the one that provides the opportunities. Yeah. It's not people. And so we don't need to be stuck in those paradigms.
Yeah, that's good. In that, you say that you discovered that you could be anything God asked you to be, which is in line of what you're saying. Yeah. Talk to me about that, because it's like, wait, you could be anything God asked you to be. It's not you could be anything that you wanted to be or that you thought you would be, or, you know what I'm saying? Which is sort of like a culture thing where it's like, I'm going to do this and be this, but you're saying anything God asked you to be. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, it's not that you abandon your dreams. I always say that God is the best caregiver of your dreams because he gives them to you in ways you've never expected, not always when you want them. You think you're ready for them, but he also he shepherds you along the way and carries you along the way. And so for me, it hasn't been an instance. It's been a gradual thing. As I've gone along the road, I'm like, but I can't, someone would say, well, you should do this. I don't really feel like I'm capable of doing that. You should run a Bible study, or you should try out for this job, or you should, and I'd be like, yeah, I don't think I'm really there. And then God would challenge me to just try it or to just do it. And out of that would come, a new understanding of what I could be if I would just trust God and go for it. And so I'm very much a different person than I, was before. Yeah. I'm not the quiet mouse girl anymore. But it's an ongoing challenge. I don't think you ever God doesn't like you to get settled into your own little space and go, okay, I'm really cozy here and I'm staying there. God goes, no, we got other things to do. Yeah. So even, when I've been through challenges, and you sort of just want to stay and go, I'm not worthy or whatever, God goes, let's keep going. And that's been the coolest part of my life.
Yeah, cool, yeah. Tell me about, because you talk about God so relationally. Like, God told me, he directs me. And a lot of people struggle with that, Ruth, that they're like, they always question or second guess, was that God? They don't have a vibrant relationship or communicate, in an effective or a passionate way. Mm-hmm. What does your sort of inner dialogue and relationship look like with Jesus?
Well, for me, I read my Bible more than I read a lot of Bible studies or books. It's really my go-to daily time. Yeah. And for me, that's paramount. Of course, we all go through in and out of those times where things get busy and you're like, I haven't spent that time. But that's sort of one of my priorities, kind of like working out or eating healthy, right? You go in and out of it, but it's my primary spot. And through that time with God, when I'm reading the scriptures, it'll just challenge me to think about something differently, to try something, and also just to be challenged in different ways. And then there's those times where it's just like, I just have the sense that it's like, okay, we're done with this boring stuff. Like, let's get on to something else.
Right.
And usually it's when I'm really not ready to do that, and thinking differently. And, the idea of thinking differently and getting out of my zone is just not, I'm not thrilled about it. So,
because you always want to be in control, comfortable, in the place where you're like, I can handle this. I know I can do it. And I always felt, even in my own life, Ruth, it's like God's always like, nope.
Yeah.
And I think that is where, when people always go, well, my life with Christ and Jesus isn't fun or passionate. It's like, the fun part of it is trusting him. So it's sort of like this battle where, we want to have this great, fun, adventurous type of life, no matter what our circumstances. But then when opportunities present themselves, it's God's like, okay, here you go. Then we go, no, it's too scary. I'm too afraid. I'm going to fail. It's not going to be perfect. I'm not equipped. I'll be, in the imposter syndrome, and I
exactly.
And then we create all these things in our head when it hasn't even happened, and then we don't do it.
Yeah.
Where I think, for a lot of women, and men, that's part of living life with Jesus. You just step out and I've said to people, I failed at stuff. Some stuff didn't work, but I was like, honestly, oh well, then it didn't work and onto something new. It's hurt for a bit, but then it hasn't hindered me or immobilized me to, not live a life that has so many opportunities, right?
Yeah, and the verse that I wanted to bring out to you, because it really stuck out to me the other day when I was reading my devotions, and that's basically in Matthew 11:25 and 26. It says, "At that time, Jesus prayed this prayer, 'O Father, Lord of heaven and earth, thank you for hiding these things from those who think themselves wise and clever, and for revealing them to the childlike.'" And here he's referring to his disciples. So these are the guys that are hanging out with him. Yeah. And, he's picked a tax collector. He's picked, the fishermen, the bottom of the barrel people to hang out with him. And, I often feel like the bottom of the barrel person. And God basically goes, you know what? You're perfect, because you don't have any paradigms that are holding you back. And we always, when you're the bottom of the barrel person, you view yourself as unlovable, not leadership material, not fabulous, who wants to do anything with me. But God goes, hey, you're perfect. Let's go. Let's run and do a lot of fun things, because you're not stuck in, I have to do this and I've got to do that in order to make this perfect world that I want to live in. You're like, I got nothing, so let's go.
And isn't that the best way to live?
Yeah.
I got nothing, so whatever happens, great or bad, I think that sense of I still know who I am.
Yeah.
God is still with me, still loves me, and so we'll just do this life adventure. I think I love that. Now, you and your husband, Andrew, are very successful in business. You've done a lot of, business and very successful. And in sort of the world's eyes, it's like, you could have done anything else. Most people would say with that, kind of success, you could do different things in your life. But you guys have chosen something completely different. And you talk a lot about this sort of defining success, not by society, but where God is calling you to do. We'll talk about that, because that's a struggle now. I mean, Christian or not, wherever we are on our faith spectrum, the culture we live in, especially in North America, the drive for money, success, wealth, comfort, consumption, materialism, it's all there.
Oh, yeah.
And we can just, and especially when you are successful and you are wealthy, there's the lure of that and expectations of how your life should be and what you should do.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that, because I know for my viewers and listeners that will be a great takeaway and learning for them, of someone who's there and has made different decisions than what the world would expect of them.
It's absolutely true. And, we're not really retirement age. And my husband recently retired. And part of that comes from a theme that we've had through the course of things growing. As the business grew, it started in our basement. We started 2 businesses in our basement. They both did very well. Eventually, one was let go, obviously, because the other one was growing at a much faster rate. But the one that grew was a travel company, and so we were able to go and do these sort of high-end tours. And I started becoming a person that I'm not. I was like, oh, this is not really up to my standard, or can you get
you even
my
had the
bag?
accent. Did you have that little...
Oh, well, you must put on the British accent.
Why is it always the British accent?
I don't know.
Every time we do this, like the British accent.
That's right.
High tea with the Queen.
So I was going to this place mentally that is just not really me. And I went, you know what? I don't want to be that person. And then, my husband and I talked about that a lot. We didn't want our kids to be those people. We wanted our kids to be people that cared about, people that work with them, that work for them, to care about the kids that are getting teased, to be there for people. And so we've constantly asked ourselves the question, how much is enough? And
that's a good question.
The reality is, if you don't ask yourself that question, you can keep going, because every new thing that you get can make you want to get a new thing. And we have downsized our house about 4 times. We live much more minimal. Our house is very clean, not cluttered, because what we noticed is the more stuff you had, the more stress you had. you've got to take care of your car, you've got to take care of your house, you've got to take care of your garden, and just the more things you had, the more you felt obligated to do different things. Like I've got 1,000 craft things. Well, now I've got to do all of those 1,000 craft things.
1,000 craft days.
Right. So the more you keep around you, the more you add to your stress. You've got to work harder to pay for the bigger house. You've got to, if you want to be in the know or want to be seen, then you've got to be in the club membership and and it can really continue to go, the big cottage. And we decided, you know what, we don't want to do that with our money. We would rather do enough that we feel free to be involved in other things and invest in people that are really making a difference in our community. And we feel blessed. So for us, this is time for us to give back and really invest in others. And we're really thankful that our boys have taken that same attitude. Yeah.
So that question, you said, how much
is enough?
Yeah. It's a good question.
Yeah.
And I think anybody, no matter where you are financially, how much is enough? Because you can say that when you're, in different socioeconomics all the way around. Yeah.
And it really is like a gradual thing that you have to be conscious of. You know what? At the end of the day, the stuff is not going to make you feel better about yourself. What is going to make you feel like you've lived life well are the relationships that you have, how well your kids are doing because you've invested time and effort into them. And it's the meaningful adventures, the meaningful events. Yeah. That is what makes you go, yeah, my life has been wonderful. The stuff really doesn't do anything for you. So
and I think that's good, because I think when you think, you talk to some young people and sort of millennials and younger, and it's all about getting so that you can have this great life. And as I've gotten older, Ruth, it's like, I was there, like I love nice things and whatnot, and there's that's still some stuff that I get in life, some nice things, but as I've gotten older, it's the relationships and the time and the commitment, the investment in significant relationships, and have really filled my life. And then with Chris, with great friendships that, you go, we could be sitting on the sidewalk, but I've got friends around me, and this is a great day. So what I want to encourage people is that rather than, sort of pursuing that, maybe start changing the focus and pursue great relationships and community. Yeah. Not that, because I think, people that have money so that they can help in areas of, with marginalized people and helping the needs of the world, that's key. But I think if that's just the focus, is just to get money so that you can get the bigger thing, so that, and you can be in the club so you can be seen and it's popularity, then I think there's a check.
It's just an emptiness. And you know what? That's something we don't want for the next generation either. Right. All of our kids, we have not been the parents that give you the new latest iPhone, the new latest iPad. We are intentional. They work for things, and it has helped them frame the value of what they work, what they have. And it's helped them frame the value of working hard, but being invested in the community and other people. It's just, I look at it and go, one of these days we're going to be standing before God. What do I want to be telling God when I get there? Yeah. Guess what? I had all this stuff and it was so awesome. And I want to be, Lord, we had some really great times with a lot of really amazing people, and you took us a lot of really amazing places. That's the conversation I'd rather have.
Well, to end this time, which I could talk to you for like hours, I want to finish just with this last thought, because one of your passions is you like to encourage others to redefine themselves through a relationship with Jesus, which when I'm hearing all the things you've said, it is through that kind of lens in this. What do you mean by that? Listeners and viewers are listening and saying, redefining themselves through a relationship with Jesus.
Well, I mean, there's a point in time that all of us reach where something that is really important to us gets shut down. So in my case, my business, which was marketing and branding, had to be shut down for the travel company. And I was devastated for a year. I bawled and had, I was really mad at God. And I felt like at one point he said, when you're done with your temper tantrum and rolling around on the ground, let's talk some more. And what I found was when I just, got over being mad at him and then and got into the Word and talked to him, that the more you read God's Word, the more you get into it, and it really doesn't matter where you read, but you just start to remember, oh yeah, God loves me. He has a plan. Good things are going to come out of this, and wait on the Lord. We've become a very self-help, quick fix, make me feel better, fast kind of society, and we're missing that gap where God puts you at a standstill and goes, okay, let's you and I really talk and get to know each other again and get refocused. And so, when things are falling apart for you, instead of running to the self-help book, to the, whatever program you can hop onto, I just encourage people to get back into the Word and just read the Word, get mad at God,
Yeah,
tell
be real with him,
tell
right?
him how upset you are.
Yeah.
But I can guarantee you that God brings the best out of the worst situations. And we've just seen that over and over again where, because of loss, I was $25,000 in debt. And all of that was paid back in a couple of years after I trusted God. And those stories go over and over again.
So I can see where then this riding motorcycles, sailing, and racing cars comes a little bit from, right? So because I'm listening and I'm like looking at, these on the table, these trophies, and looking at, this around my neck. And I kind of realize when you have that kind of mindset where you're sort of open-handed and you kind of go, okay, God, what's the next thing? I can see where the fun of this for you. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Right?
It's kind of like getting rid of the garbage and the extra stuff in your house. You're not lugging around all of those limitations. You're like, what are we doing now?
Yeah. I'm going to go sailing.
Yeah.
And you guys just came back from
Yes.
how long was it again?
We since our boys were all in university, we took a 9-month sailing sabbatical to regroup as a couple. And it was along the same lines. You know what? Money is not important. Our relationship is more important. And
Beautiful.
We're going to take time together. Yeah.
Ruth, well, thank you so much for taking time with me. This was amazing. I think we now should go race our minis
Yes.
around Toronto. That would be so fun. Well, no, you're an Audi now. I'm a mini, so we kind of do our thing.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. I love just the honesty of, your story and your life. And, seeing you I can't even imagine that you were this sort of timid, shy, kind of mousy girl that was being teased, because I look at you now and go, wow, I would have never expected that or assumed that for you. So I think that's really sort of a testament of the work that God is and has been doing in your life.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for coming and hanging out, and we'll have to get you back here again soon.
Thanks so much, Melinda.
Hey, thanks for checking out this week's episode of Your Story with Melinda. There's plenty more at faithstrongtoday.com/yourstory. But if you really want more, make sure you subscribe to the show so you never, ever miss an episode.